This is Stand Up for the Truth, addressing important issues and topics affecting Christians across the nation.
Q90FM, welcoming our online listeners at q90fm.com/listen, and it is Stand Up for the Truth Friday, November 22. You're hearing a show that is so hot it melted the snow in northeast Wisconsin, Mary Danielson. So we're back to green grass again for a while.
Yes, we are, and leaves, the leftover leaves. So it's still fall. And welcome to Stand Up for the Truth for November 22nd. Carl Teichrib is my guest, and I can't wait to catch up with him and his ministry opportunities over the last few months, and more on that in a moment. But first, my scripture, Ecclesiastes 1:8-11. All things are full of labor, man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. That which has been is what will be, that which is done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrances of things that are to come by those who will come after. A little cryptic there by Solomon. Let's pray this morning. Lord, we bring ourselves to you in wonder and awe at who you are, what you've created, and how you deal with the sons of men regarding eternal things. Lord, you are the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, and worthy of all of our praise. We thank you that we can have fellowship with you because of the atoning work of Jesus Christ. Lord, give us grateful hearts for the gift of salvation and the bountiful promises found in your word. Oh, Lord, we know that you wish that none would perish, so we lift up those in our lives who don't know you yet. Soften their hearts, Lord. Go before us in the Holy Spirit to speak the words of life to them, that we may find a soft and fertile ground. We ask for a great work in them unto salvation. We lift up Carl to you, Lord, the gifts and the ministry you've given him for much fruit for the kingdom, for protection on him and his loved ones, until you lead them safely home. In Jesus' name, amen. Carl Teichrib is a Canadian-based researcher, writer, and lecturer focusing on the paradigm shift sweeping the Western world, including the challenges and opportunities faced by Christians. Over the years, he's attended a range of internationally significant political, religious, and social events in his quest to understand the historical and contemporary forces of transformation. I call Carl a researcher's researcher. He's a boots-on-the-ground kind of guy. It is great to welcome him back to Stand Up. His book is Game of Gods, and you can find that on Amazon. Carl, thanks for being with me today.
Mary, I'm excited to have this conversation. Thank you for inviting me on your program today.
Looking forward to it. Do you have snow up where you are?
Yes, we do. In fact, we just had a nice snowstorm.
Yep.
And yesterday I spent 4 hours on the tractor pushing snow out of our yard, and we're supposed to be getting more.
Ooh, how much did you get? Was it your first one yesterday?
Yeah, it was our first one. And for us, like I'm in Manitoba, for us, this is, we had a longer fall than normal. And I'm so thankful. Yeah. Oh, I'm so thankful. So, I mean, we only got maybe a foot or so, but yeah, it's enough. It was enough for the first shot. And the other day somebody asked, so how are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just waiting for spring. Yeah. I mean, it's like, what are you talking about? It's just beginning. I know. I'm still waiting for spring. Yeah,
well, we only got a few inches, but it was enough for people to go in the ditch because, you know, they don't remember how to drive when you get to this point. So there were some ditch dwellers, but all in all, people were fairly civilized. And you know, judging on the game last night, it was a snow globe in Pittsburgh and everywhere else. So pretty interesting. Here we go, right? Here comes winter.
Exactly.
You know, for the last couple of years, we've connected here on the podcast to talk with you about your field trip to the Burning Man Festival in Nevada. It's always eye-opening. Every year I learn something new about it and about the spirit of it. You've had another busy year. You also have done some teaching and lecturing at Miller College of the Bible. What can you tell us about that? I mean, you know, talking to the bright young kids today, what's your takeaway from your lecturing at the college?
Oh, well, you know, number one, I'm always excited to lecture to young people. It is, it's a joy. It's a challenge, but it's a joy. So this year I had a class of, I think I had 55 students, which was really nice. But one of the things, Mary, I did, and this is the first time I've ever done this, in the very, very first class of the week, I asked the students to raise their hand if they've never heard of these names. And so I had some more obscure historical names right off the bat, but I said Mao Zedong, Pol Pot, hands went up everywhere. Gorbachev, hands went up. And I expected they wouldn't know Khrushchev. I would expect that. And down the line, I went historically. Stalin, hands went up. Lenin, hands went up. Winston Churchill, hands went up. Hitler, there weren't near as many hands that went up. Actually, there was very few, but there was still hands that were sheepishly going up, going, yeah, I don't know who this guy is. And what struck me, Mary, was now the generational disconnect. Because, of course, you grew up in the Cold War era. Yeah. These names, these personalities, they meant something because it literally shaped the course of the last 100 years and is still impacting us today. And I told the students, I said, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. This is the product of the fact that we don't educate our children on history any longer. And we certainly don't connect it in a way that pulls together the dots and understands how worldviews, movements, ideologies have shaped the course of the last 100 years. And so we're often wondering, like, why is it that young people are gravitating towards socialism or gravitating towards some of these progressivist ideas? Well, they don't understand that these have all been tried before and have remarkably failed. I mean, failed in spectacular, horrific ways. But that kind of blew me away. I mean, it didn't, but it did. I was expecting that the students wouldn't know some of the names, but boy, when it came down to things like FDR, Winston Churchill, Lenin, Stalin, Hitler. Okay, we have a generational division now, historically, with having an understanding of how our culture has been shaped.
Absolutely. In the big picture, people say elections matter. You bet they do. Even Woodrow Wilson's election mattered when it comes to the Federal Reserve and things that when you go back that far, you can trace absolutely the influence that he's had on monetary policy in this country, 112 years. So, yeah, elections matter. So context is king, Carl, and I know that you know that.
Absolutely.
I'm preaching to the choir about that. Transformational festivals. Burning Man is a transformational festival, and I'm going to ask you to define that because people hear the phrase Burning Man, and there's no context there, speaking of which. There's music festivals, there's cultural festivals, but this is something more immersive. This is something multi-layered. Help us set the stage a little bit before we jump in and define Burning Man itself and your role there. What is a transformational festival?
Certainly. A transformational festival is a fairly new phenomena. It's been around for a while, but really it's a product of the counterculture of the 60s, moving forward up into the last, 20 years, 25 years, when transformational festivals have kind of come around into their own. And a transformational festival is we can call it a container. It's a space. And in that space, you have license to explore yourself. You have license to explore what it means to operate in a radically different kind of community. When you think of things like a music festival, you're the audience, and you're sitting and you're listening. In a transformational festival, everybody is a participant. Nobody is truly the audience. You are all participating. And so it will integrate art, it integrates music, it integrates workshops, lectures, sharing times, community centers and circles. It's, as you said, it is multi-layered, it is multi-sensory, and it begs you to become a part of this new homeland, this new sense of community. And so when I'm at these events, and I've done surveys, I often hear people talk about this as being their church, or that this is their new home. And so there's a sense of identity that comes with it. It's not just simply, hey, I went to such and such music festival. No, I'm part of this new tribe. I have a stake in this culture, and it is a culture. It's not just simply an event; it's a culture, and it has it's really a global phenomena with events taking place in Costa Rica, Australia, Japan, South Africa. Really, no part of the world hasn't been touched by it in some way, shape, or form. The Nova Festival on October the 7th last year, when Hamas came in and shot the place up.
Oh, right.
And flipped the whole world on its head. The Nova Festival wasn't a music festival. That was a transformational event.
Mm-hmm.
That was a transformational festival birthed out of a much larger Brazilian transformational festival that's been running for a couple of decades. And so this is more than just a place to come and listen to music. It's a place where you integrate with new friends, a place where you are expecting, and here's one of the differences, you are anticipating, you are expecting that it's going to challenge your boundaries and that you're going to find some type of spiritual encounter or some type of special encounter, that there's going to be an aha moment when you're at these events. I don't get that when I'm going to, let's say, a concert. Nobody's anticipating, oh, it's going to change my life.
Right.
Whip-de-doo. I just want to go and hear better music than what my car stereo will play.
That's right.
And you want the excitement of the stage and the presence and all of that. Here you are part of the stage. You are part of the presence.
Wow. And they are worldwide. I've kind of been following this off and on for about 10 years myself. There's one called Cosmic Convergence, Rainbow Serpent, Earth Frequency, Bloom, Mystic Mountain. And like you said, these are all over the world and have been for some time. So there's an interconnectedness of them all, and we can talk about that just sort of on a supernatural level, if you will, geopolitical level.
Connection.
Yeah, there's definitely a spiritual connection. Now, Burning Man, I was following your trip on social media, and I see all the time and the resources and prep that it takes just to get there. And then you have your wild cards like rain and wind and mud. But this is no small event for your team. You engage the culture there. You do face-to-face. You do surveys and that sort of thing. It kind of when you're on your way there, I like to think of it a bit of as Indiana Jones and the Camp of the Unknown God, or Canadian Carl, or however that goes. It's such an adventure for you. It's such an adventure. What did you encounter this year? Wasn't it last year that it was just mud and it cut it short, if I remember right?
That's right. Last year's Burning Man event, towards the end, and this is why it made the news, because the rains came towards the end of the event, which stopped everybody from leaving or coming into the event. And so it put a pause on everything. And of course, then the world's media attention is on the event. It's interesting. This last time I was there, just literally only a couple of months ago, there was a young lady who passed away. She passed away, I believe it was Sunday night. And it was on the news. It was on the news. I found it on different news sources when I returned home. And I wasn't surprised that it's on the news, because if somebody dies at Burning Man, it's a newsworthy event. Think about this. It's a city of roughly 60 to 70,000 people. If you live in a city of 60 to 70,000 people and some random stranger just dies on the street, does that get covered by global media? No. Nobody cares. Nobody bats an eye. Some random person dies. It happens literally all the time. Yeah. But if it happens at Burning Man, all of a sudden, it's a splash in the media somewhere. Usually first on the West Coast media, but it can be across the nation. And with 2023, with the rains that came, it was a global news story. And so there's something different about this event and this place than just the average city. There's something special that's happening. In terms of that connection with all of these events, years ago, many, many years ago, I was traveling down to San Diego to give a lecture on transformational festivals and transformational culture. And in Minneapolis, as I was waiting for my plane connection, I ended up sitting beside a young lady. She had a certain style to her, a certain dress to her, a certain demeanor. She had a hula hoop. And so I just looked at her and I said, "Are you a flow artist?" Because being a flow artist is one of the subcultures within this movement. And she's going, "Yes, I am." And so I said, "Well, which transformational festivals have you been to?" And Mary, she just starts listing them off, just bang, 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 bang. Just a pile. And you could tell that she is completely immersed in it. And so I said, "Well, what's common with all of these?" She says, "Oh, it's spiritual." Yeah. It's all very spiritual. And because this is where that spiritual longing, that sense of I want to connect with some type of oneness, that I will feel my divinity, that we feel this together in the group, we feel this together in a place of nature. That's where this comes out. And then for us as Christians, we're going, we have opportunity now to have conversations about the otherness of God. God is not the same as you, not the same as nature, but God is holy. He's exalted. He stands apart. So those are some of the approaches and just some of the kind of, give you a little bit of context. You're right. It's a lot of work. I probably can guarantee that for myself, it's pretty well takes away a month of my time per year. By the time I factor in all the arranging the logistics, the travel time, they're typically, like this year, I was 13 days in the desert, my time home, the cleanup, all that goes into it. My wife and I figured out, 1 month of the year is spent on this event. So it's a huge commitment.
And you do everything to make it worth it because you have a team and you love people and you genuinely want to see where they're at, love them where they're at. A lot of people would go in there and say, well, this is, hippies 3.0, this is cosplay, this is just a new age thing. But you have to go in there, Carl, as a believer, armed with the truth, on purpose. And so this is a purposeful thing for you. You represent the true gospel. But who is Jesus to the attendees? Now, you said 60,000 people?
Yes. In fact, this year we were towards the end of the week, we were right around the 60, I believe it was 64 to 65,000 mark. Wow. And that means the attendance actually has gone down.
Oh, okay.
Because other years have been in the 70 to 80,000 range. And in most years I've attended, getting a ticket's been really tough because demand far outstrips supply. But we have had COVID, we've had economic troubles because of that. And then in 2022, when they reopened Burning Man, it was really hot, hotter than normal. Lots of dust storms, really difficult for the people who attended. I wasn't there that year because of border issues with COVID. And then this, 2023 was rain, and it really wiped out a lot of people's enthusiasm to go back. And so this year, all of a sudden, we were like, oh, where is everybody compared to other years? It's there's a marketable or a noticeable downsize in the attendance, but it was still in that 60,000 range, which is not a small event.
No,
that's for sure.
It's not. But you. Are a lot of people there, I don't even know if this is too general for you, but are they disenfranchised with religion as a whole? I mean, who is Jesus? Because I know psychedelics have kind of infiltrated the church, which is bizarre. I never thought that I would hear that or have that come out of my mouth, having grown up in the 60s. Where did that come from? But who is Jesus to these people? When you talk to them, do you ask them outright, who is Jesus to you? And what are some of the responses? Is Jesus just another mystic to them?
No, good question, because everybody who's coming is coming from a different background.
Okay.
There's no one categorization in terms of Burning Man. You'll have atheists who are attending. You have hardcore materialists. You have agnostics. You have New Agers. Everything under the sun. I've talked to Mormons. I've talked to Muslims, which kind of blew me away, but there they were. Nevertheless, you do get a sense as you're having these conversations as to where people kind of land. So this year, we ended up spending time with a young lady by the name of Julie. We talked to her for about 3 hours. Wow, it was like from 2:45 till 4 a.m. We spent time just sitting out in the dust with her, literally just sitting in the dust, having this huge conversation. We'd had a conversation once before with her. We ran into her, running into people twice at Burning Man. Really, it's almost implausible. 3 times, that's miracle level. So we'd ran into her once before, she'd overheard some conversations, and we talked to her at length. And then we ran into her a 3rd time, which was really cool. But she came to us, she said, because she'd overheard a conversation that our little team was in, where we made mention that we're Christians. And she came to us and she says, how do you bring your religion into Burning Man? And so we sat down with her, and she said right off the bat, she says, I have never thought of religion, ever. I've never thought of it until now. So, I mean, she had no concept of Jesus. She had no concept of the gospel. She had no concept of literally anything. We sat there with our little group. My daughter was with me. One of my students from Bible college was with me. There we were, the four of us, we were sitting, and we had to bring her from Genesis 1 to the gospel. And she had lots of questions, great questions. But it was evident that she had zero context. And that surprises us because we think in the West, everybody's heard. Everybody should know. We've got radio, we got TV, we have, churches on every street corner kind of thing. No.
That is
There's still a lot of people.
That is interesting because we did have, for a while there, it seemed like back in the 80s, we had a whole generation of parents who were saying, I'm not going to raise my child with any religion, and then they can make up their own mind. Well, there's nothing in their mind because you basically emptied their mind of any thoughts, so they just went on their way. They didn't train them up in any way whatsoever. I think maybe she's fruit of that.
Yeah, yes. She was from France, but nevertheless, she's now living in the U.S., and we're like, wow, you know nothing. At the end of it, my daughter prayed for her. In fact, my daughter said, can I pray for you? And Julie said to the effect of, oh, yes, that would be very nice. And almost the expectation that you're going to do it later. And because Burning Man has a gifting economy, you can use that to your advantage. And Austin said to her, no, I would have prayed right now. It's my gift to you. And it took Julie aback. And then we prayed, and Austin prayed for her. But it was interesting to watch because Julie didn't know what to do with her hands. She didn't know what to bow her eyes. She was watching all of us to try to figure out what to do. And again, it just strikes you. Okay, this is a blank slate, like completely blank slate. And then on the flip side of that, Caden, the young man who came with from my Bible college class, ended up at a progressive Christian camp where they had a discussion on Jesus and psychedelics. And he ended up having a great conversation with a young lady afterwards who had even brought her Bible with and had showed Caden her outlined passages as she's trying to discover Jesus, because Jesus, she thought, would be the best way. And she's using psychedelics to help her understand this Jesus better. And at the end of the conversation, well, it wasn't at the end, but it was partway through the conversation, Caden basically had to say to her, look, the Jesus that you are trying to follow is an illusion of your mind. It's not the true Jesus. And he explained it to her very tactfully, respectfully, but he didn't pull any punches. And at the end, she's in tears. And she wasn't in tears because she was mad. She was in tears because she was saying, you're the first person who's told me the truth.
Wow.
So this is how it plays out. So are you willing to be an ambassador for Christ, be flexible because you don't know who you're encountering? Take the time to listen to them first. Because they're people.
Yes. Absolutely. Number one, these aren't people in costumes. These are people that a lot of them are searching. Some have rejected organized religion, but deep down, we are all the same. We have spiritual beings, and we have that void, and people are ever searching, and hopefully they come to the knowledge of the truth. Also, Carl, this is an event promoting a future postmodern kind of thing, social change, for the sake of social change, like smart city model. Is Burning Man sort of a snow globe of sorts, with sand instead of snow, because they're very forward looking anyway, and they want to. It almost seems like they're practicing or rehearsing a future kind of world.
100%. Absolutely, Mary. This is a place where world-changing conversations take place. So you'll be going to workshops, and this is something in terms of the research side, our team does a lot of, going to workshops on artificial intelligence, going to workshops on, and this year we went, some of our team went to a workshop on giving nature the same legal status as human beings. And there is a push within the legal community to try to bring about some type of global change in the legal structure to recognize that nature itself has the same fundamental rights as humanity. That's a dangerous proposition, really dangerous proposition. And so we had one of the leading lobbyists for this idea giving a special presentation. So that's where we are. Lots and lots of workshops on psychedelics and how to integrate psychedelics into the legal structure of not just your country, but making it a worldwide phenomena. It's interesting. My country, Canada, we legalized marijuana back in, I believe it was 2015, 2016, just after Justin Trudeau got into office. And that was one of his election promises. And going to Burning Man, I'm my first year there was 2017, sitting in workshops where some of the same lobbyists, some of the same personalities that pushed for it in my country, who, by the way, came from your country, they're there, and I'm listening to their conversations and hearing how they strategize, how they work with legal teams, how they approach then, in your country, governors' offices, state officials, and how they're pressing in with literally very deep pockets to push for this, the legalization of psychedelics. And you're right, Mary. You think, okay, this is a crazy topic. I mean, really, psychedelics? But absolutely, psychedelics have made a complete, kind of a turnaround. We're now entering a renaissance in the psychedelic community, to the point where this year at the Wild Goose Festival, which is the progressive Christians' own transformational festival.
Yeah, they're still doing that. Wow.
They are. They had at least 2 workshops. I understand. I wasn't there, but I understand they had at least 2 workshops on integrating psychedelics into progressive Christianity. So that's huge. You're like, all right, what a strange thing to talk about, but there is a psychedelic Christian, scare quotes around it, psychedelic Christian subcultural movement, and it blends and kind of blurs the lines of so many things, and in many respects it's come out of this milieu, out of this cultural phenomena called Burning Man, because Burning Man sets the stage for those conversations.
Yes, there's a lot of world influence with Burning Man that people don't realize. Now, this, I think Wild Goose, is that the Jim Wallace, Brian McLaren crowd? They put that on? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I didn't know if they were still doing that or not. Wow.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I don't know if they have it on the webpage still, but years ago when the festival was just kind of in that earlier part of its phase, they made reference to the fact that they were receiving inspiration from Burning Man. So, I mean, I'm not surprised. Burning Man has spawned hundreds and hundreds of events like this. There's over 100 regional burns around the world. Israel has a Burning Man event called Midburn, where they burn an effigy of Adam and Eve. South Africa has, I believe, the second largest Burning Man event. Even China has a Burning Man event. And then you have regional burns across the U.S. The Midwest has them. Iowa has a small one. My own country, Canada, has a number of Burning Man regional events. So they recognize that this is now a global culture.
Yeah,
it's not just simply one event.
It really is transformational. But the Wild Goose thing, I mean, all I can think of is the U2 song. They still haven't found what they're looking for. Wild Goose. How the irony of the title even isn't lost on me. We're talking to Carl Teichrib today, and he every year takes a trip to Burning Man, and we're learning more and more how influential this is around the world. And when we come back, I want to talk about the politics aspect, where the Israeli-Palestinian conflict comes in, for example, wokeness, and also the temple. There's a temple there, and I want to ask him the purpose of that. So we will be back in 2 minutes with more from Carl Teichrib, so stay with us.
Thank you so much for sharing today's Stand Up for the Truth video podcast. We invite you to check out our other headline news site, ctrnn.org. That's ctrnn.org.
Feedback, questions, and topic suggestions are always appreciated. Email us at comments@standupforthetruth.com.
Welcome back to Stand Up for the Truth for this Friday, the end of another week. We have Carl Teichrib with us, and he every year makes a field trip to Burning Man, and he makes it really worth everybody's while when it comes to bringing the gospel and challenging people on their spirituality at Burning Man, among other things. Carl, political stage plays, what goes on over there? Because there's a lot of wokeism. We have the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Are people actively being political there as well?
Yes, they are. There's no question. So we have had in the past, and I believe it's probably a yearly thing, where we have U.S. congressmen who attend. We have governors who attend. I found that out this year. I think it was in 2019, we had 52 U.S. mayors who were there for the event, touring the event, looking to take home ideas from the culture back to their urban zones. I think it was 2019, we had a representative from the World Bank. In fact, the chief economist, the former chief economist for the World Bank, who was there to study how Burning Man could be used as part of the World Bank's Charter City program. This year, we attended a workshop with a Republican insider on building left-right coalitions. And then when it comes to things like the current conflicts, the Ukraine-Russia war absolutely plays out on the playa. It plays out in the artwork. It plays out in some of the connections that happen. This year we had a large art piece. It was a great big sign that said, "I am fine," and the whole sign was built with street signs and city signs from places in the Ukraine that had been through conflict. So all the signs, all the pieces that made up this big art display were just shot up with all bullet holes, shell fragments, and you're reading the write-up of what this means, and you realize that there's some crazy politics that are unfolding right here, to the point. In fact, last year, this kind of still blows me away. Last year, the Ukraine Minister of Defense for digital warfare took the time out to come to Burning Man to set up an art display for Ukraine. I mean, I'm sorry. I thought you're in a war. And of course you are in a war. But you've taken the time. And it's not just simply going for a weekend. I mean, he's there for the entire event. He's there putting up an art piece. And I'm like, okay, why? Because the entire world's political eyes at some point is looking at this event as an influential event. It's a place where influencers go. It's a place where people who have connections attend, where people are networking, and influencers. So the Burning Man last year, and again this year, became almost the hub of many propaganda campaigns to the issue of Israel-Palestine. My goodness, Mary, we watched this play out in some pretty remarkable ways. There was an absolute propaganda war at Burning Man this year over Israel-Palestine. There are camps set up on both sides. So one of our team members saw an art car with a Palestinian flag roll up to an Israeli camp, screaming and yelling at them. There was enough tension between the two camps and how this was being handled, literally from a propaganda point of view, that by Friday, the police presence had expanded greatly. Police had circled the man base, because the reason it's called Burning Man is we have a massive human effigy, and that they burn it at the end of the week. And so the police had brought in more security personnel, surrounded the man base, surrounded the temple, surrounded the major gathering points, because there was an expectation that there would be an event, a catastrophic event. And you immediately think of, okay, there's a security concern. In fact, one of our team members this year is a global security analyst who works with global missionary groups. And so when we realized by roughly the middle of the week that we have a real tense kind of showdown between these two sides being played out right in front of us, that there is a possibility that if you wanted to make a statement at the global level, this is where you would do something. This is where something could explode, literally, not just figuratively, literally, and create, all of a sudden create the condition where everybody's eyes are on this cause and this event.
That's
And so the
interesting.
police were taking it very, very
Mm-hmm.
seriously. By the middle of the week, it was like stuff was rolling, and by Friday, the police presence was really ratcheted right up
Mm-hmm.
because the tension between these two camps. So global politics are playing out.
Yeah, and that really underscores the influence, the global influence of this. And I want to talk more about the influencers in a minute here. But there's a temple there. I imagine it's interfaith, ecumenical, and no faith, and a cathartic experience, from what I understand. What does that serve? This temple that they have there. Describe that for us.
Absolutely. This is one of the more interesting features of Burning Man. So everybody views Burning Man as a great big party, and I
Yeah.
get that. The party element is there. But really, it's a combination of Mardi Gras and the World Economic Forum. That's kind of how Burning Man can
That
kind of be
sounds
pieced
about right.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in the middle of this is a structure that in many ways has become more important than the man itself, and that's the temple. And so the temple is a huge structure. Uh, Google pictures of it. It's enormous. This year's temple had 30, 40-foot high praying hands that you would walk through to enter the temple grounds itself. A really remarkable structure. I went to a workshop with the person who designed the temple this year, and they had spent roughly $70,000 on materials to make the temple happen. And by the way, the temple at the end of the week burns as well. So the faith behind the temple is this: there's no faith. Nobody is staking a claim and saying this is a Christian temple. Nobody is staking a claim and saying this is a Buddhist temple or a Muslim or not. Nothing. The building, and it looks like a cathedral, or it looks like a special type of structure, and it is. It starts off as a blank slate. The walls are bare and clean. There's nothing on the walls. And here's the purpose of the temple. All week long, thousands and thousands of people will come to the temple and write on the walls of the temple their deepest hurts, their pain. They'll leave notes to deceased loved ones. They'll put wedding dresses up. They'll bring ashes of their loved ones, photo albums. By the end of the week, the place is mounded up with literally the memories, the emotions of thousands of people as they are crying out, literally crying out for some type of healing, some type of hope. And when you're reading these messages, Mary, they are heartbreaking because you can be anonymous and put anything down that you want. And people are just pouring themselves out. So it's an emotionally charged place. We as a team have to kind of be careful because we want to bring the gospel forward, but we don't want to bring the gospel forward in a way where we are potentially leveraging somebody's extreme emotional state of mind.
Yeah. That's wise.
We are there. Yeah, we are there, and we are having conversations, but we have to be very careful about the fact that we want to be respectful. So I'll give you just an example of how this played out with one of our team members, and actually it was my daughter. She saw some larger man with his head up against the beam, because it's all made of wood. He's got his head up against the beam of one of the walls in the temple, and he's sobbing. He is literally just like this. And so Austin walks up to him, puts her hand on his shoulder. He pivots, wraps himself around my daughter, and is heaving in his sorrow. And when he finally gets control of his emotions, he's asking her, why did you touch my shoulder? And Austin's like, I can see you're a broken man. I'm a Christian, and I see you as somebody of having value because of who made you. And they end up having this conversation. It turns out he's a Russian. And he says, I'm an atheist. I'm a hardcore atheist. And Austin's like, well, you're at the temple. And for him, the breaking point had been, here he had seen all this joy, the excitement, all of the flash, the glitter of the event itself. And then he walks into the temple, and it's like hitting an emotional brick wall as the pain and the heartache of humanity now pours forth. And that extreme experience from one to the next broke him.
Yeah.
And so it opened up that opportunity for Austin to just come alongside and, literally just put her hand on his shoulder and go from there. So, I mean, stuff like that. There's a lot of hurting people there, Mary, a lot. I'll give you one other example. Again, this happened with my daughter. And by the way, all of our team had, we had more encounters for Conversations for Christ this year than we could have ever imagined. Wow. There was something this year that was a little special. Part of it, I think, is people are all of a sudden starting to wake up to the fact that wokeism doesn't work.
Yeah.
Progressive ideas don't work. There's a lot of people questioning, a lot of non-Christians who are going, what in the world is going on? So we're at Camp Mystic, a great big camp of influencers. This is where, your CEOs go. This is where your top digital creators all go, your people with AI, all the rest. Camp Mystic is full of perfect people. They're beautiful people. They look absolutely like they're $1 million because they are $1 million. These are powerful, influential people. And we're sitting there waiting for a workshop to begin. I can't remember what the topic was about. It doesn't matter. My daughter was sitting behind me a little ways, and she had caught the eye of some lady walking through the crowd. And Austin smiled at her. This lady stopped, made a beeline right for my daughter, got on her hands and knees, wrapped herself around my daughter, and for 2 hours wept. And so my daughter and one of our other team members, Ginny, spent all afternoon ministering to her. And they were like, what's going on? Wow. Bottom line was, she was completely alone. Here she was in this space with beautiful people, powerful people. She was part of the camp, and she had never felt more alone in her life. And a smile and the connection with the eyes was all it took to bring her forward. From what I understand, some of our team members are in a continued conversation with her, because we don't leave it just follow. We don't leave it just to lie. Many of the people that we've encountered, we still maintain conversations with. And for a couple of them, including this lady, that includes long distance discipleship.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and transformational means one thing to them when they're pouring their heart and soul into this event. But the transformation that God has in mind for people is something completely different. And you guys are there to be at the front line of potential transformation of people for all eternity. So that is the beauty of what you guys do. I'm telling you, we were talking in the break about it sounds exhausting. I'm thinking to myself, I couldn't do that.
Totally is.
But God has given you guys this burning desire to be there and to meet people where they're at. And they may be putting all their eggs in that one basket every year, but they still bring who they are. They still bring their loneliness and their hurts with them. And God bless you guys for the wisdom to know the difference between all these things and to be there for these people. I want to briefly look back at an event from 2013 that you were at called Global Future 2045 International Conference. It was held in New York City. Talk about your influencers. And I'm thinking, Carl, that this is really all connected. The gathering of, and you say, world-class scientific thinkers, inventors, philanthropists, entrepreneurs, and spiritual leaders who are looking for this evolutionary strategy for the human race, the next step of the human race. And this includes a scientific, spiritual sort of a syncretism. Now, to me, that's oxymoronic, but as I said, humans are spiritual beings. Technology isn't doing it. Technology, the cold hand of technology, isn't doing it. So they're looking to put this metaphysical thing with it. And that was, seems to me, the gist of that 2013 event. And Burning Man, would you say that this is a very similar kind of a thing?
Definitely the worldview behind it has parallels, there's no question. So 2045 Congress, the Futures Congress, was that year's arguably the largest, most influential transhumanist event, looking to, of course, take technology and guide our human evolution through the use of science and technology. And it was layered from end to end with spirituality. In fact, because I knew you were going to bring it up, I brought up here's the agenda book. And in the agenda book, the very, very first page, Dmitry Itskov, the Russian entrepreneur who who put this together, described it this way, that they are looking to create a evolutionary strategy, taking us to a society based on the 5 principles of high spirituality, high culture, high ethics, high science, and high technology. And you're going, this is a blend, a complete blend.
Yeah.
No different when I go to Burning Man. It's both mystical and material, spiritual and secular. It's blended together. Oh, golly.
Wow.
So in April of this year, I was at the Eclipse Festival in Texas. 35 to 45,000 people show up for the Eclipse Festival. It's very much like Burning Man.
Mm-hmm.
It is a transformational event. There is an entire subculture of people globally chasing the solar eclipse because it's a spiritual thing for them.
Forgot about that. Yeah, the eclipse.
Yeah. So what was so interesting, Mary, was we had a section at the eclipse event set aside for shamans. They had a sacred fire. There were spiritual healers. It was all very spiritual. It was all indigenous spirituality, as everybody was looking to make this spiritual cosmic connection between the earth themselves, the moon, and the sun. Wow. And so while we have shamans on one side, if I had a good arm, I could have picked up a rock, tossed the rock, and I could have hit Elon Musk's big camp, the space stage, where SpaceX is now having conversations, where we have just, again, a kitty corner from that. We had another big camp where Elon Musk's top neuroscience are there talking about Neuralink. We have people from NASA talking about integrating psychedelics and scientific processes.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden you're going, oh, this is an ancient future worldview.
Yeah.
You have the shamanistic, spiritual, pagan past brought forward to connect deeply into the technological future that we're trying to create.
Wow. Wow.
Burning Man is no different.
Yeah, it's a microcosm of everything that actually, as prophecy students, we expected, but we've always looked at it at 30,000 feet, and now we see it at ground level. And it's an incredible thing to behold. That's why I chose Ecclesiastes this morning, because there's nothing new under the sun. There's the ancient, and then there's the new, and it comes together. And I thought, that was a pretty amazing passage that Solomon saw.
Yes.
But wow,
yes.
Very, very interesting. And I was reading your article, Ambassadors in Babel, from the Berean Call, September 2024, and I highly recommend people get this because this is a great, great tie-in, application on what you were looking at. And you're talking about this remarkable tower in Genesis 11. It was more than an upright structure, you say. It was a city assembled with a cause, and boy, did my brain immediately went to Burning Man. Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is the heavens. This is a very famous passage. Let's make a name for ourselves. And we don't know how big that community was, you say, or how tall that tower was. It doesn't really matter. It's a human agenda of collective aggrandizement, as you put it, to engage in an act of idolatry, to elevate humans to the clouds. Carl, this is what we are seeing, I do believe, is Ambassadors in Babel, which is what you are doing. The Gospel of Babel, they're participating in their own salvation, their own eternity. Carl, help us tie this together.
It is the Gospel of Babel, and it's the Gospel of Babel contrasted against the Gospel of Christ. Mm-hmm. And so for us, and this is a really important issue, Mary, how now do we begin to answer what the world is doing?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Do we do it by hiding our heads in the sand? Do we do it by thinking it's not going to, is that our response? Mm-hmm. Is that our reaction? We react to it. We typically react emotionally to these kinds of things. And I get it. I understand the sentiment. We see this stuff, and I see it on social media where, all of a sudden we're on the keyboard. This is the stupidest thing ever. And, these people are crazy and they're all going to hell, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Okay. And I understand the sentiment, but I mean, it's actually not helpful.
No.
It's not helpful. It's not a response. It's a reaction.
That's right.
A response would be, I recognize their worldview. I understand their assumptions. And now I will look to challenge the assumption by bringing a truth claim into the conversation that will demonstrate to them that there is a better and true path, not the path of death that they're on. But we have to then understand the culture well enough And we don't have to understand every facet of everything, not at all. We have to understand it well enough, though, that we can challenge the assumptions, that when we hear certain things, that when we are engaging in conversations and all of a sudden certain topics come up, that we now can go, oh, can I maybe bring a different perspective into this? That kind of an idea.
Yeah.
At the workshop at Burning Man, where we had the lobbyists talking about how everything, all of nature has to have same legal protections as humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was, the underlying assumption was that there's no difference between us, God, and the slug, the deer, the dirt.
Right.
Everything's one.
Right.
I had to raise my hand because I'm kind of tired of the craziness that this would represent. I had to raise my hand.
Yeah.
And I am challenging the assumption, something to the effect of beavers aren't having these conversations, deer aren't having these conversations, geese aren't having these conversations.
Wow.
The very fact that we're having these conversations, regardless if you are pro or con, means that we have value higher than nature. Mm-hmm. There's a lady sitting beside me. I don't know who she is. I know now who she is. She turns, she looks at me and she goes, "You're right." All we did was challenge the assumption, which then led to a massive afternoon-long conversation with her and her boyfriend, the rest of our team. I went to their camp, gave them copies of our book. They came then every single morning after that to our morning Bible study. They came on Sunday morning. They even dragged a stranger in off the street and said, "Come to church with us." They're not calling it church. This was just our little group Bible study to kind of get our heads in the right place. That we did that every morning. And we're still in conversations with her and her boyfriend. But all we did was challenge. First of all, we recognized the worldview and then could challenge the assumption underlying that worldview. That's it.
Wow.
We studied the culture. All we did was study the culture enough to know where it kind of lands.
Yeah.
And then tactfully, and sometimes you can do it in a way that's kind of humorous. That actually helps. Challenge it.
Yeah. You are one step ahead of the church in this, Carl. This is something that is being done on a massive scale. We hear about the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and Noah Harari and the things that they say. These are symptoms of a bigger cultural decay and the Babel effect of actively opposing God and his order. And, he comes down and he scatters them because, there's nothing they can't do outside of him. And he had to judge that. And that's grace. That's pure grace when God judges that because
right.
He doesn't want to leave mankind there. And I think the church needs to catch up because we're either ignoring it or becoming one with it. If there's psychedelics in the church, that's becoming one with it. Wow, or be ambassadors in Babel like you are, be a representative of the kingdom of God, oppose it with spiritual weapons and witness, and this what you guys do is a treasure. And my challenge to the church is to keep up. I know it's hard. I know headlines are hard to keep up with, and all these movements are hard to keep up with. But I really want to recommend everybody out there read Ambassadors in Babel by Carl Teichrib. And you can actually just Google the article, Ambassadors in Babel, Carl Teichrib, PDF or whatever. You don't have to go to the Berean Call necessarily and try and find it. You can Google the article, and I highly recommend people read this. Carl, we only have a minute left. It went so fast. Is there something we missed, anything that you want to encourage us by, edify the church with as we close?
Well, you don't have to go to Burning Man. You have Burning Man all around you.
Yes.
Wherever your feet are,
yeah.
Literally wherever your feet are, that is where your ministry is.
Yeah.
And let's just take that calling seriously.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Wise words. I mean, the time is short. But God bless you for what you do and talking to the students and just expanding their thinking a little bit on what is going on around them. Like you said, you don't go on social and say, "Boy, is this stupid." Be wise.
Right.
Be wise as a servant.
And learn how to respond and not react. We're good at reacting.
Yeah.
Now let's learn how to respond.
Yeah.
I think that's really key.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Lord willing, I'm sure you'll be at the one in 2025, and the theme has been released tomorrow today is what it's called. I was looking at that, how interesting. They see themselves as like the last century's World's Fair. That's how they see themselves, and that's the theme for next year. So I hope to talk to you before then, Carl. But if
and continue, if your listenership could continue to pray for us every year as we do this. We're already planning, we're already processing what next year looks like, and we have to do that, Mary, because of the amount of work that's involved, the time, the cost, the energy that has to get expanded.
Thank you so much, Carl. We are out of time. God bless you. We sure appreciate you. It's Friday. Join me next Tuesday for a fresh podcast before Thanksgiving, and then that's it for next week. So thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful weekend.